pick up at the bottom of Gimel Amud and we are discussing this issue of this Beitzah that talks about the status of the egg. And one of the things that the Beitzah said was that if there's a doubt, it's forbidden. So the Gemara says this is a real challenge according to those that they understand that the problem of the egg is a rabbinic problem about like fruit from a tree or liquids that flow, or you could add muktzah. And the Gemara says, well, maybe we're talking in the end of it about a case of a treifa issue. But then we have a problem about the other halacha in the Mishnah that says that if it's mixed up with 1,000, they're all forbidden. So if it's a problem of yontiv related, then you understand it's a principle of davar sheish lo matirin. Don't eat it now, wait till tomorrow. But if it's a problem of treifa, why would it be that it would be forbidden? So the Gemara says, well, maybe the idea is that the egg is a significant object. It's like it has some independent identity and therefore does not become part of a conglomerate. And that's the question of davar shebeminyan, something that would normally be counted. The Gemara says that only works if your category is kol shekar kalimanot, things that are sometimes done by counting, and other times in other means, volume or weight or a basket of eggs. But if you say that the only thing that is not batel is 8 shekar kalimanot, things that are only sort of sold by number, then an egg should be batel. So we're back to our question: why is the egg not batel if we're dealing with a case of a treifa? Again, if it's a yontiv case, then wait till tomorrow. We understand why it's not batel. But if it's a treifa, why is the egg not batel if it gets mixed up? So we pick up with that, and the Gemara says the following. 5 lines from the bottom, last 2 words on the line. I'm a Rav Papa, line beginning with the word Papa. So says Rav Papa, Hi Tana Tana Delitra Ktsiosu. The author of this Beitzah that says that the egg is not batel is the same author of the Beitzah of the litra, like a liter of Ktsiot, which are cakes of figs or dates. I always get it mixed up. Of figs. So what is that of the Mishnah? So what is that? Or Mishnah Beitzah, there's a question here, because it is a Mishnah, but it's an expanded in the Beitzah. The Amar, anyway, we will see that this Mishnah Beitzah says, we're still going to stick to our guns and say the reason the egg is not batel is because it is something that is counted. Now, but you pointed out to me that it's possible that Rabbi Meir, who focuses on things that are counted, would only talk about things that are only counted, and an egg is not only counted. Not a problem. I'm going to show you an author of a Tana that holds that even things that are sometimes counted are not batel. Not only that, even if the thing is only a rabbinic problem, as long as it's sometimes counted, it is not batel. What is that? Let's take a look. The coach came to rise, and certainly in a biblical problem, like we're trying to say, the case of the egg is a treifa issue. Not according to Mishnah. It said it's also a Beitzah because the Beitzah is the expanded version, and we have the expanded version here. Litra ktsiyot. If you have a liter, a container, a barrel of these pressed figs, and basically they would press figs into cakes, and they would turn it into like a huge, big, it would basically be like you'd have these rounds. I think that's how they used to make cheese, right? Anyway, basically, if you have your barrel, right? Anybody ever see you can have like these round? You'd have these like rounds of, you'd have these like you press these things into the barrel, these rounds of fig, which this would be a round of all these pressed figs together, right? And you'd have them all sort of stacked in a barrel, and then you chop off sections and you would sell them. So you have this litrictio, you have these this barrel full of these pressed figs. Shadarsa alpi, I'm sorry, you have this quantity, literally a quantity of these pressed figs. Shadarsa alpi egol, that you pressed it in this egol. The egol is the barrel. Okay? So here was your litrictiot, okay? Now that I'm standing, I'm going to wind up using the board more, which is, I guess, a good thing. Here is your sort of your round of pressed figs, and you pressed them, or your quantity of pressed figs, your liter, and you pressed them into the barrel. Now, what's the issue? The problem is that these figs are truma, and you press them in a barrel, and you don't want to have to treat everything of truma. So let's take a look. You don't know in which barrel you press them. I'm sorry. I don't know what's wrong with you this morning. Then you did is igul dursa. That's one case. That you pressed them in a igul in a sort of in a container, and you don't know which container. Or alpi chavit in a barrel. Then you did is a chavit dursa. You don't know which barrel you pressed them in. Alpi kiveret, which is another type of barrel. It means a beehive, but it was a type of a cylindrical container. Then you did is a kiveret dursa. Okay, so it's all three scenarios, but it's the same point. You have a quantity, a litra, and again, the fact that we're using this idea of a liter or whatever, a quantity is significant because it shows that these are not things that are sold by counting. These are things that could be sold by volume, by weight, etc. Okay, so that's going to be important, that they're often not sold by counting. And you press this quantity of figs into a barrel, but you have dozens of barrels and you forgot which one, and guess what? That quantity of figs, those figs are all truma. Now, the basic halacha is that truma, you need 100 to cause bittul by truma. Okay? So 100 times as much. So basically, imagine that I've got a lot of barrels here. All of them have pressed figs. Okay? The quantity in this one is one liter. Okay? 1 liter is the quantity of the truma that I pressed. How much would you need to say, and I don't know which one it's in, that there is bittul? So you could say, well, count up all the quantity of figs here, all the quantity of figs in all the barrels, and if there's 100 liters, it's bata, right? But that's really not fair. Why is that not fair? Because you know that your figs are at the top of one of the barrels, right? It's not like they're somewhere in here. You did al pi chavit, right? Al pi agol. You did it at the top. So logically, what you would need is the only ta'arovet, the only things that are in the doubt are the tops of all these barrels. So what you would need logically is 100 barrels. Okay? So let's see what the Mishnah says you need in order to create bittul. Okay? Yeah.
What if you had 100 times volume and 2 barrels?
Oh, 100 times meaning the volume of 100 tops.
Yeah. Just take one
right.
top.
So that's an interesting possibility. The thing is, can you do that? Are you looking at the top as like an independent unit? Like if you have one apple that's orla mixed up in like other apples that are orla, do you look at how much, what's the total volume of those apples, or do you have how many apples you have? It could be that when you're not dealing with something like a stew and a soup that gets all equally distributed, but you're dealing with independent units, you need 60 times units or 100 times units, because in the end, the question is which of these units. It's not like a total issue of volume and of volume. Is that not making sense?
Well, okay.
You understand the difference? If you drop a drop into soup, then the question is it disperses equally, and then it's a question of proportional volume. Is there enough to lead to a certain degree of dispersion? If it's an issue of independent units, and we say you need 60 other units, or 100 other, 60 other, 100 other, 60 other, or 100 other units, not volume.
Yeah, but we said here we're not looking at this as units.
Oh, no, we might be looking at the tops of the barrels.
We're looking at it as volume.
Well, yes, we did describe that this is a volume, but now that we're trying, there is a volume. Now that we're trying to deal with bittul, then we don't know, is it this top of this barrel, the top of this, and that's really a question of which unit is it, right? So let's take a look what it says. Okay, Rabbi Meir says that this is a debate of Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yehoshua, and here's his version of the debate. Rabbi Meir Omer, Rabbi Eliezer Omer. So Rabbi Meir says that Rabbi Eliezer said the following: Roines hel yonot kiuhin prudot. You see the tops of the barrels as if they're separate. The bottoms of the barrels can ma'alot, meaning create bittul with the top, which means you don't look at it as each top is the thing that you're in doubt of. You look at it as if you don't treat the top, as if you know distinctly where it is. It's separate. It's mixed in with everything else. And therefore, you can look at 100, which includes the bottoms of the barrels, and 100 times, maybe it is the volume and the quantity and so on. Okay, so he says, technically you're right. Your only question is the tops of the barrels, but I'm going to go easy on you. Now, part of the reason we can go easy on you is very often you have these things, particularly by truma d'Rabbanan, by truma, which is like rabbinic truma because it's fruit. A biblical truma only applies by yayin tirosh v'yitar, which is wine, oil, and whatever. Wine, oil, and grain. Okay, so, but the truma of fruits is only rabbinic. And sometimes we find that the rabbis were lenient about the truma of fruits. For example, I'll give you a more radical case, which is, I don't know if it's more radical, but you have 2 boxes of truma, and 1 box of truma and 1 box of chulin. And below you have 2 big vats, one of truma and one of chulin. And one box, box 1 fell into vat A, and box 2 fell into vat B. And you don't know, did the truma fall into the truma, or the truma fall into the chulin? So someone says, well, you can assume the truma fell into the truma. Why can I assume that, right? So again, because that case was a case of rabbinic truma, they went easy on you. So it's an interesting idea. They're not just saying you don't need to satisfy the requirement. Yes, you need to satisfy the requirement, but sometimes we'll go easy in interpreting what it means to satisfy the requirement. You understand the difference? Like, forget about it. But you need it. But here we'll consider the 100 to be not 100 tops of the barrels, but it includes the bottoms of the barrels as well. Okay, that's what Rabbi Meir says. You see the tops of the barrels like they're distinct, but distinct here actually meaning distinct and mixed in. You can use the bottoms to raise up to cause bittul, and you consider the entire, it's mixed in with all of the quantity of all of the barrels, not just the tops. Rabbi Yoshua says the more straightforward thing. If there are 100 mouths of barrels, then it's batel, because the question is about the tops of the barrels. And if not, tapumim asurim, the tops of the barrels, of all the barrels are forbidden, because you don't know which one is truma. The hashulayim, and the bottom is mutarim, permissible. So Rabbi Yoshua says the straight approach. Rabbi Eliezer is more lenient, allows a creative interpretation of where the suffix is to create bittul. That's Rabbi Meir's version of the debate. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, here's the debate. Rabbi Eliezer says, Im yesha me'a pumim ya'alu v'iblav ha'pumim asurim v'ashulayim mutarim, that Rabbi Eliezer does not start with his creative leniency. Rabbi Eliezer starts more strict. He says that you go by 100 tops of barrels. If there are 100 other barrels, then it's batel. If not, because you can only look at the top of the barrels. And Rabbi Yoshua, you see Rabbi Eliezer, everybody's one level more stringent than the previous version. So Rabbi Eliezer already starts more stringent and says you go by the tops of the barrels. So how will Rabbi Yoshua be more stringent? The tops of the barrels should certainly be enough. So Rabbi Yoshua, no, even if there are 300 barrels there, lo ya'alu, it will not be batel. Okay, now let's read the end and then go back and unpack that. But that's obviously a very radical statement. So the Gemara says, "Darsa beigul ve'enu yodea be'eze igul darsa." Now, if it is if you pressed it in the top of a barrel, and igul is a type of container, you don't know which one, divrei kol yalu, then everybody would agree it's batel. Huh? It says divrei kol line everybody would agree it's batel. It's exactly the scenario we've been debating, that it's at the top of the barrel and you don't know which barrel it's in. It says no. Amar Papa Hachikama. This is what the end of that braita means. Darsa beigul ve'enu yodea be'eze makom igul darsa. You pressed it in a barrel, but you don't know where it is in the barrel. The north, the top of the barrel, the bottom, the middle of the barrel. Then divrei kol yalu. That's easy, because then it's not just the question is which top of the barrel is truma. It's where is the truma in all of these figs, right? Because you don't know top, middle, which barrel. So then everybody says bittul works. But if it's at the top, then there is this debate. Now, the issue is, here you have, according to Rabbi Yehuda, you have Rabbi Yoshua saying it's not batel. And remember, this is even rabbinic. This is the truma of figs. It's not grain. It's not wine. It's not oil. This is rabbinic. So, and even though he says it's not batel, why is it not batel? It's not batel because here he is of the opinion anything that is counted, even sometimes counted, is never batel, even if it's only a rabbinic problem. So he says these circles, you sometimes sell them by weight. You sometimes sell them like by volume, a whole barrel full of them. But sometimes you sell them by unit. I'm going to sell you one circle, one round of pressed figs. So since it is sometimes sold by unit, he says it's not batel. So again, this is a long answer to the question, why is the egg mixed up with other eggs not batel? If it's the simple reason that it's a yontif problem, so fine, wait till tomorrow. But in order to get out of this question of, that if it, it might be it's another issue, and how then will we explain it, why it's not batel? So then the Gemara had to say that it's. I'm sorry. There was another because in order to address the other issue about the issue of safek, right? There were two things to remind us. there are two things that were in the Mishnah. He said, I'm really going to want to go into a lot. He said, Safek Asurot and Nitarva Be'elef Kulam Asurim. So here's the Gemara's problem. Why is Safek Asurot? So if it's rabbinic, you should say a Safek rabbinic is leniency. So it says, okay, this is talking about a special case of treifa. But if it's a case, how do you explain this line? That even in a mixture, they're all usher. If it was the rabbinic problem of Yantav, we understand. This is the idea of davar sheish lo matirin. But if you created the states of treifa, why should it not be batel? And that's why we introduced all of this to say, because there's an opinion out there that anything that is sometimes counted, like this figs and like an egg, even if it's not always counted, will never be batel, even if it's only a rabbinic problem. Okay, so we've managed to successfully say that this line is talking about treifa, and the reason it's not batel is because eggs are sometimes counted. But it's a very dochuk read of that Beitzah to introduce treifa and then introduce this idea that even something like an egg, which is often sold in other ways, because it's sometimes sold in units, is not counted.
I understand that. Could you re-articulate conceptually davar shebaminyan? Why should Bitul not apply?
Yeah, because it's like a word I have about when you talk about why we don't count people, right? And the beginning of of Kitisa.
Right.
So it's because people should never be things that can just be amalgamated. Every person, right, is unique.
It's
so
identity.
you don't just say,
Right.
oh, I've got a group of 10 people here. No, I've got Dove and I've got Michael and I've got Charlie and I've got Joe. You can't just say, it's 10 generic people and they all combine together to be a group, right? So that's the same idea of davar shebaminyan, right? Each if these things are only sold by number, then that means that each one is independently significant. Bittul works by saying it's all part of a conglomerate of an amalgamated group, and it loses its identity.
An individual gets
but
lost
some things refuse to become part of a group. Everything is an individualist. You can think of that, right? So it's davar shebaminyan. Every single egg is an individualist and refuses to be part of a group. And since it refuses to be part of a group, there's no way we can consider the idea of bittul. It's fine. Okay, so let's continue. All right? So that's one explanation. One explanation is that the reason safek is a problem, even though it's only rabbinic, is it's treifa. How do you explain this? If it's a yantav issue and it's a rabbanan issue, it's just weight. But if it's a treifa, how do you explain this? And the idea centrally is davar shebaminyan. Now let's see as the Gemara continues. Amar Papa. Hachi Kamar. I'm sorry, just did that. Ravashi says, La'olam safek yom tov safek chol. La'olam safek yom tov safek chol. Okay, yes. We're going to go back. The issue is not an issue of a treifa. The issue is this thing is a muktzah problem. It's a problem of the juices that run off, or the fruit that fall off. It's all a rabbinic problem. Great. We understand why it's not batel because of wait till tomorrow. But then we have to go back to this issue of safek. If it's a doubt whether it was born on Yantiv or on Chol, then it's a rabbinic safek and we should be lenient. So if we're going to read the Beitzah simply, without introducing this crazy idea of treifa, and that it's a question of the rabbinic issue of using it on Yantiv, why should a safek be a problem? So let's see what he says. But here's why it's going to be forbidden. The same reason you can accept that the egg on Yantov is not batel because the idea is wait till tomorrow, and anything that's been minyan lo batel. That's the same reason why you should say that a safek, a doubt, should be forbidden. Although we normally say a doubt in a drabanan is permissible, here it's a doubt in a drabanan, but the point is the same. Wait till tomorrow. Okay? If the principle behind the reason the egg is not batel when it gets mixed up is because you might as well just wait till tomorrow, we're not going to let bittul work, well, that answers your question of why a safek is also forbidden. It's true it's only a rabbinic problem. But why use this rule of safek drabanan l'kula if you can just wait until tomorrow? Okay, now that is a big chiddush, because normally the idea of davar sheish lo matirin was only said by this idea of a mixture. Right? It's not said by this general issue of of being lenient in the case of doubts by Durabanan. That is not at all the standard usage of it. And imagine the halachic implications of that idea, right? So you could even abstract it further, and some people do this. So even when they're dealing with a shaila, which is on a Durabanan matter, and there's reason to be lenient, they'll say, yeah, but you know what, better play it safe. It better just be strict anyway. Right, which is what this is sort of saying. Better just wait till tomorrow. Don't rely on this idea that a suffix of a durabanan. So if you abstract it more, right, it could be huge. But even if you don't abstract it more, it has profound implications. So for example, the whole issue that came out throughout the Middle Ages of eating chadash, of eating grain that you don't know, whether it was before the Omer or after, right, before the second day Pesach or after. So one of the whole arguments was, well, we can allow it, and this is what became the primary argument, that even if you say it's a dioraisa, we can allow it because of a double doubt, a svek. What's the double doubt? Maybe it grew this year, maybe it grew last year, because they had a lot of old grain in storage. Even if it was this year's grain, maybe it was grain that took root before the Omer. So, which is funny, because that all boils down to one question. Is it Yashan or is it Chada? Mm-hmm. But they constructed it as a double doubt. And then the question is, but wait a minute, guess what Chadash is? Chadash is Davar Sheyesh Lo Matirim. It'll become permissible after the second day Beitzah. So if you say Davar Sheyesh Lo Matirim is not only a rule by Bittul, but is even a rule in the principles of being lenient in the cases of doubt, so who cares about your Sveka? It's a Davar Sheyesh Lo Matirim. Wait until next year. So maybe there's a difference between a svek and a suffix derabanan, but this idea is a very nice read of the Beitzah. It's all talking about the egg. It's all talking about yantov. It's not batel because wait till tomorrow. Your whole question was, okay, but it's forbidden. Be lenient in the case of a suffix. And the answer is, since you can wait until tomorrow, yesh lamatirim, then we can't even apply the principle of a suffix derabanan l'kula, which, as I said, could have really profound implications, saying that even this idea, you say, just wait until tomorrow, wait until it becomes permissible. Yes?
A baby boy who is born either late Friday afternoon or early Friday night, and we aren't sure, we do the brit, we wait till Sunday for the brit.
Correct.
So this is another...
But that's just the principle of suffix d'oraita l'chomer. You don't want to violate Shabbat, potentially.
Okay.
That's not really related.
That's not the Rabbi.
Okay, so that's his read of the Beitzah, which is a much easier read, but with pretty significant implications. Now we're going to go on to another Beitzah about the egg, and this is the Tosefta. Tanya, we're talking about Beitzah. Acherim omrim, others say, meaning Rabbi Meir, Mishum Rabbi Eliezer. So here again is a tradition Rabbi Meir had in the name of Rabbi Eliezer. Beitzah teachel, he v'imah. The egg can be eaten. He or tochal, you should eat it. Anyway, he and its mother. So go ahead, eat the egg, eat the hen, not a problem. All right. So the Gemara says, "B'may askinan." What type of scenario are we talking about? If it's a hen that's set aside for eating, right? That's been our question all along. So then basically what he's saying is, the hen isn't muktzah because it's set aside for eating. It's yad, remember. And the egg, he's saying like Beit Shammai, it's also not a problem. Whatever problem you come up with, fruit that drop off from a tree, that's not an issue. Go ahead, eat the egg, eat the mother. So the Gemara says, if that's true, pshita, dehivi masharya. It's obvious. It's not obvious the egg is permissible, but as Rashi says, it's obvious the mother is permissible. Why do you have to tell me the mother is permissible? Nobody ever debates the mother if it's a hen sitting around to turn into food. So the Gemara says, so let's say it's talking about a hen that's around to lay eggs. So again, we can understand why you would say the egg is permissible if you don't hold of muktzah, but why should the mother be permissible? I mean, that's that is so asura. It and the mother should be forbidden. Excuse me, I said that wrong because the egg and the mother are both the muktzah problem. But the point is that we are now working with the assumption that nobody is arguing on the muktzah point. That the whole debate of Beit Hillel Beit Shammai is about a hen that is standing around to be eaten. So if it is a hen that is standing around for laying eggs, how could Rabbi Eliezer say it's permissible? It shouldn't be permissible at all. It's muktzah. So Amar Reb Zera said, Tochal agav ima. You can eat it through its mother. On the basis of its mother. What does it mean on the basis of its mother? Heichi dami, what's the case? Amar Baik, gon shalakcha stam. Now, of course, this is the case that I was waiting for somebody to ask me. Until now, the whole question has been, is it set aside for laying eggs, or is it set aside for eating? I'll say, you don't know. You have a lot of hens around. They lay eggs, which you're very happy with. Some of them you're going to want to shaft. Others of them you're going to want to keep on laying eggs. You just bought it. You haven't made up your mind. Okay? So what would be the halacha there? So he is saying, and again, to remind you, if the egg was set aside for eating, it's not muktzah. If the hen was set aside for eating, it's not muktzah. The egg is not muktzah. The only possible issue with the egg is some external question like fruit from a tree. And if the hen is set aside for making eggs, it's muktzah and the egg is muktzah. So here the scenario is, you bought it without yet identifying what its use would be. You go into Shalak Chastam, you purchased it and you haven't made up your mind yet. So, Nishchata, if you decide on Yantav, hey, I'm going to shech this, then Huvera de la Chilo Medes. Then that retroactively shows that this was a hen that was going to be eaten. So, look, and therefore, not only can you eat the mother, you can eat the egg. Lo Nishchata, if you went through Yantav not shechting it, but now you want to know what can I do with the egg. So, well, what can I do with the egg? Rabbi, what can I do with this egg that my hen laid on Yantav? Well, why ask me about the egg? Just shech the chicken and you'll have chicken for Yantav. No, I don't want to shech the chicken. So why do you want to shech the chicken? So it could be, well, I don't want to, even if I want to eat it, I don't want to eat it now. But we're going to say, if you are choosing not to shech the chicken, that will interpret it as a hen that is set aside for laying eggs. So in that case, that'll make it clear that it's around for laying eggs. So this is interesting because of this extra word that to eat it and its mother. Why to mention the mother? That leads the Gemara to finally address the case of what's a case of stam, when you haven't identified what the purpose of the hen is. Okay, and there the Gemara will says that you can use the question of whether you wind up eating the mother to retroactively identify what the purpose of the hen was, and therefore what the status of the egg was. So that's one explanation. Yeah, right, exactly. It's also an interesting question about muktzah, right? What do you do if something is essentially suffix muktzah? Like if you're not sure whether you wanted it to be off limits, right? You might not even need breira. Maybe just a suffix muktzah should be mutter because it's not clearly off limits. But anyway, so the Gemara deals with it based on what's going to happen to the mother. Yes.
This gets to the question I asked before. Some breeds of chickens are bred for laying eggs, and some for being
I assume
slaughtered.
that if it's really an issue of a breed, then that would have the more dominant impact l'halacha.
Okay.
All right. So the Gemara says. So that's one answer. What it means is you don't know what the status of the mother is. You can decide on Yantav, and that will then decide the status of the egg. Rav Mari says. Rav Mari Amar. Guzma Ktani. We're just exaggerating. Now, guzma is not a word in English. It means, we normally would translate it as an exaggeration. We all know what an exaggeration is, right? Like there were nobody ever saw Simchas Pesach Shoev in its life. There were it's 400 gallons of oil, etc. Now the Gemara actually treats that as literal, but okay, we know what an exaggeration is. But the Gemara here is using guzma not as an exaggeration, but as almost like saying extra things to drive home your point and for emphasis. And the basic point is, you're right. There's only a chiddush about the egg, not about the mother. But if I want to tell you how mutter the egg is, I'm going to tell you, the egg? Go ahead, eat the egg, eat the mother. So I'm not really, obviously everybody agrees you can eat the mother if the mother's set aside for eating, but I'm just doing it to strengthen my point. And that's guzma, like to just talk a lot and to show how, as a way of underscoring it. So that's Guzma Ktani, and this is clearly the easier read of this Beitzah. Tanya, we turn to Beitzah. Others say Mishum Rabbi Eliezer. This is exactly the quote we had before. Beitzah teachel, eat the egg, or tochal, you should eat it, can be eaten. He, it, the ima, its mother, the efroach, and if it has a chick, eat the chick. The kliposa, we'll go ahead and eat the shell. Gesundheit, eat everything. Okay, now the only chiddush there, maybe how do you eat shells, but the only chiddush there is about the egg. But we say all that stuff to just underscore. You're not going to forget after today's shiur that this image of go ahead, eat the egg, eat the mother, eat the chick. So that underscores the point. Okay, it's not a logical argument, but it emphasizes the point. So the Gemara says, now look, maybe you'll want to say, no, we're being very literal. If you're being literal, what does the word shell mean? Eat the shell. My klipasa, why are you saying eat the shell? If literally it means eat the shell. Does anybody eat a shell when something can be eaten? So what you're going to say is it doesn't mean the chick and the shell. It means eat the whole chick within its shell, which is not a bad argument. You've laid an egg, eat the egg, eat the mother. What? There's a live chick in the egg? Eat the chick with the shell. Go ahead, eat everything. Okay, but if that's true, he says, then that's not the halacha. Why is it not the halacha? Adkon lo pligi Rabbanan alei Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov. So there's a debate we're going to see very soon between the rabbis and Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov about a chick before it's opened its eyes. Is that yet considered an independent identity, or is that Aver Min Achai? It's a piece of meat that fell off of the mother, like the egg is a tree that fell off the tree mother. This is a tree, and therefore it's a limb from a living animal, and you can't open it. When does it get its own identity? In the yeshiva daf the last 2 days, we've been learning beginning of life issues, and that's the abortion question, right? When does the fetus get its own identity? What degree is it part of the mother? And so on. One way of framing the question. So here, there's a debate. Is it mutter after the egg has cracked, before the chick opens its eyes? And when does it become considered its own thing and not part of the mother? So the Gemara says like this. Ad kan lo pligi Rabbanan alei Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov. Until now, the rabbis didn't argue on Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov. And once the egg has cracked and the chick has come into the world, but just not opened its eyes. That's a debate yet. While it's still in the egg, lo pligi, they don't debate. Everybody says it's forbidden. Okay, so therefore, what does this statement mean? Eat the chicken, eat the shell. If it's literal, then nobody eats the shell. If it means eat the chick while it's in the shell, that's usher. Forget about yontiv. It's usher because it's still a part of the mother. Because it's like Aver Min Achai. So what does it mean? Ella efroch v'klipa. So guzma. We're being exaggerating. We're just, being. There's got to be a better word for that in English. In this case, not embellishing. We're talking in an embellished way. So therefore, eat the chick, eat the shell. So hochanami, eat it, eat its mother. Guzma, we're just embellishing. Okay. So anyway, the point is, don't get worked up about the phrase. That was a way of underscoring. But what's fascinating here is it's not just Beit Shammai. Here we have a position that even when the hen is set aside for eating, and therefore it's obvious you can eat the hen because it's set aside for eating, we have a position that rejects this idea that of Beit Hillel that the egg is a problem. We have a tradition not only of Beit Shammai but of Rabbi Eliezer, who said, now Rabbi Eliezer was Beit Shammai, I know Rabbi Eliezer, if you people know that, so it's not so much of a separate tradition. But anyway, it's interesting to be quoted of Rabbi Eliezer, the same thing that the egg is forbidden, even when the mother is set aside for eating, even though obviously the mother is, I'm sorry, can I keep on saying forbidden? I'm not well. I woke up a little sick today. Anyway, so we have this tradition of Beit Shammai that the egg is permissible when the mother is set aside for eating, and that's what this Beitzah is saying. The same way you can eat the mother, you can eat the egg, no problem. The position of Beit Shammai that the egg is permissible. Okay, now the Gemara goes on. Itmar was taught Shabbos v'Yontiv. Let's say you have Shabbos and Yontiv back to back. Okay, for them it was a 2-day yontiv. We have 3-day yontivs. So you have Shabbos and yontiv back to back. Rav Amar nolda b'zeh asur b'zeh. It was born on Shabbos. It's going to remain forbidden on yontiv. Rabbi Yochanan Amar no nolda b'zeh muteres b'zeh. No, if it's born on Shabbos, by yontiv it'll be permissible, or the reverse. It was born on yontiv. If the juxtaposition was it'll become permissible on Shabbat. So what's that a debate about? So the Gemara says here's what it's about. Nema kasavar Rav kedusha achasi. So the most logical debate is, when Yontiv and Shabbos come juxtaposed, do you look at it as a continuous single Kedusha, or do you look at it as two separate Kedushot? Now, obvious way to tell is that what do we do when Yontiv precedes Shabbat? Follows Shabbat. What do we do when we're bringing in Yontiv, if Yontiv follows Shabbat? We make Havdalah. So clearly indicates the idea that we don't see it as a continuous. These are the most discontinuous. It's not like 2 days Yontiv or 2 days Rosh Hashanah. Here, Shabbos and Yontiv have very different characters and halachic statuses and so on. But the Gemara is saying maybe there is that opinion that it's all one continuous thing. So if it's born on one of the 2 days, it remains forbidden on both. Okay, and that would be the logic. And it's permissible because you see it as 2 separate entities. So the Gemara says you can't say that because that would have Rav saying that it's one Kedusha. The Hamar Rav says in another context, Halacha Arba Zakanim, we threw like the 4 elders, Valibah to Rabbi Eliezer, and who go according to Rabbi Eliezer, to Amar, who says, Shtei Kedusha, saying it's 2 Kedushot. So we don't worry whatever this 4 elders is, but the point is Rav says it's Shtei Kedushot. So if Rav says Shabbos and Yontiv is 2 Kedushot, why when it's born on one is it forbidden on the other? Right? If Shabbos, let's say it was born on Yontiv and now Shabbos is coming in. So now I don't ask, the same muktzah question from yesterday. I ask the Shabbos question by itself. It's about to be Shabbos. What's muktzah, what's not muktzah? Anything that already existed in the world and I had a reasonable opportunity to use is not going to be muktzah now that Shabbos is coming in, even though it was born on Yontif. Yontif is just the day before Shabbos. And it was an egg that was in the world before Shabbos began, and if each day is distinct, I'll say, as Shabbos begins, this is something that's already exists and that I can eat. So then what would be the logic that you can't eat it? So the Gemara says, why would Rav say you can't eat it? So Ella says Gemara, Hacha b'Hachana de Rabba k'miflagi. The issue is again that famous Hachana that Rabbi introduced, which is, you'll remember, a classic case of that is Yontif and Shabbos juxtaposed. And Rabba's idea is not just muktzah, did it exist, but was it something that was prepared on the weekday for the sake of Shabbos and Yontif. And this egg was only prepared, finished in the mother on Yontif, and then Shabbos came along. So Rav Islay Hachanat Rabba, Rav has Rabba's problem, so the egg has to be finished while it's still weekday, even if there are two Kedushot. Rabbi Yochanan Leisay Hachanat Rabba, and Rabbi Yochanan does not hold of that concern, and therefore since it was around yesterday, when Shabbos comes, that's enough, even if it wasn't finished on a whole day. Kitanai, this is like the following debate of Tanai. Nolda b'Shabbos, tochal. B'Yom Tov, you can eat it on Yom Tov. B'Yom Tov, Nolda b'Shabbos, tochal b'Yom Tov. Right, eat it the following day, which is Yom Tov. B'Yom Tov, tochal b'Shabbos. It was born on Yom Tov, eat it on Shabbos, even if it's the following day.
I should maybe eat it raw.
Yeah, exactly. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, they do. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Mishum Rabbi Eliezer, Adayini machlokas. No, that debate of Beit Shammai applies even in this case. The Beit Shammai says eat it, and Beit Hillel says do not eat it. So even though it was born yesterday, you can't eat it. Why would that be? If there are two Kedushot. So the Gemara says, this is the debate, and this exactly is the debate of Rav and Rabbi Yochanan. And the reason is not one Kedusha. The reason is this idea of Hachana D'Rabba, which required it to be ready from a weekday. Okay. So now the Gemara says like this. It ends with some story. Yes.
Why can't you cook? Why
On
is that
Shabbos.
No, on Yom Tov.
No, but he's responding to the scenario when it was born on Yom Tov and then.
For late on Yontif,
Right.
you can eat it on Shabbos. The only opportunity you have
Oh
to eat
yeah,
it
I
raw.
thought we were talking about when it's.
We're talking about both scenarios.
Both
Okay.
scenarios. The
Okay.
Shabbos scenario, eat it raw.
Right. So the host, the proprietor of his inn or wherever he was staying, of the landlord of his building, he had some eggs, miyom tov l'Shabbos. They were born on Yom Tov, and he wanted to know if he could eat them on Shabbos. So also the Kamei Dera, he came to him. Amalei, he said to Rabbi Barava, not only do you want to eat it tomorrow on Shabbos, but who wants to eat raw eggs? Can I fry up some eggs, scramble up some eggs, and I'll eat them today on Yom Tov and eat them tomorrow on Shabbos? It's a classic question of can you prepare on Yom Tov for Shabbos, your tafshilin, etc. That was the question in his head. Can I cook them? It never occurred to him to think that the egg might be muktzah. He never read the first Mishnah of our Masechet. So he said, Amrulay, so Rav said back to him, my daitcha, what is your assuming? That in terms of thinking that you can, if it's born today, you can use it tomorrow. So besides the question of am I allowed to cook today for the sake of tomorrow, but your assumption you can use it tomorrow. Rav Rabbi Yochanan. First of all, we rule like Rabbi Yochanan, who says that, and Rav Rabbi Yochanan, and you want me to say that this is the debate of Rav and Rabbi Yochanan, and we should rule in general like Rabbi Yochanan, and therefore, according to Rabbi Yochanan, if it's born yesterday on Yom Tov, it's mutter on Shabbos. But 1 minute, feel Rabbi Yochanan, lo kashari elo goma, exactly as you were asking. Even when Rabbi Yochanan says if it's born on Yom Tov, it's permissible on Shabbos, that's to swallow it raw. With gom alamachar, avol biyome lo, but you can't handle it today on Yom Tov. Okay, so forget about cooking. Today is muktzah. Tomorrow it'll be permissible. So even at today's Yom Tov, tomorrow's Shabbos, you can't say, "Can I cook with it for tomorrow?" Today it's muktzah. It becomes a problem tomorrow. Okay, so that though is interesting that we do rule like Rabbi Yochanan that when it comes tomorrow, you're allowed to eat it. So now the Gemara says like this. Okay. The Hatanya, and we taught it in the Beitzah. This is not a question; it's a support. Achas Beitzah shenol b'Shabbos, achas Beitzah shenol b'Yom Tov. Whether it was born on Shabbos or on Yom Tov, ein metaltal milta. And here's an explicit discussion of it as muktzah. You can't move it. This is exactly what we quoted before. Lo l'chasos bo sakliv, lo lismach bo kara amita. Not its bottle stopper, not to use it for your bed. However, you're supporting your bed with it. And therefore, even if it's mutter tomorrow, today it's also like Beit Hillel. Ushbezichnei de Rav Papa. So now another story. the proprietor of Rav Papa's establishment, the Amilehu Gavra, and some say just some random guy, okay, the also the Kamei to Rav Papa, really doesn't matter who the guy was, he gave to Rav Papa. He had the reverse case, an egg that was born on Shabbos, and he wanted to know, can I eat it tomorrow, which is Yontif? Again, the question of Rav and Rabbi Yochanan. Also, he said to him, Amalei, can I eat it tomorrow? Amalei, he said to him, so he didn't give him a straight answer. Zil, he said, go ahead, now leave me today. Come back tomorrow, I'll tell you tomorrow. Why? The Rav, 1 minute. No, he will come, tell him when he comes back tomorrow, assuming he comes back. The Rav, Rav would not put an Amora. The Amora, like we use the word Tana and Amora to mean like Ravina, Ravashi, Beit Hillel, Beit Shammai, but I call those capital T Tana, capital A Amora. There was also like a lowercase T Tana, lowercase E Amora. So the Tana in the time of the Mishnah was the person that memorized all of the oral oral tradition and all the sayings that became the Mishnah and the Beitzah. The Mishnah and Beitzah also were taught as a memorized book, not as a literal written book. But anyway, the Tana there was the one who was the Bar Ilan of the day, the storehouse of all of the sayings and the knowledge. And Amora was different. An Amora, because what do Amoraim do? Amoraim just give their pieces of information. Tanaim, they give their pieces of information. Amoraim argue. They discuss. So an Amora, by parallel, is somebody that actually is not just saying over for collected knowledge, but is my basically loudspeaker. If I'm the Amora, if I'm Rebbe Meir, then I bring Charlie here, and I can't yell to this audience of 1,000 people, but I chose Charlie because he's got a good voice, and I just say to Charlie, okay, tell them in this case, this is the halacha, and then he yells it out to everyone. So he's my Amora. So that's the other use of the word Amora. Okay, so Rav would not have an Amora stand by him when, the way Rashi explains it is, like the first night of Yontif. Okay, because basically he wouldn't give a shiur, and in the middle of a shiur he would often give psak halacha. He refused to do it at the night of Yontif. Why? Mishum shichrus, because he would be drunk. Wow. So he would drink a lot, have a lot of wine at the meal. So he would not go ahead and give a shiur. So this guy came to him, Yontif night after he had a lot of wine, and as we're going to, as we read in the Torah that read recently, the role of the Kohanim is also that to paskin, and you can't paskin when you're drunk, and therefore, and he knew that if he gave a shiur on any topic, he'd wind in throwing up some psak halacha, couldn't help himself. So therefore, Rav would not give a shiur, and he certainly wouldn't answer halachic shilas. So he told him to come back tomorrow. Guess what? He actually did come back tomorrow. Amar he said to him, here's the halacha. So remember, it was Yontiv, the egg was laid on Yontiv, and he wants to know, can I use it on Shabbos? Ichu hashtat ichtalai. And you know what? It's good that I didn't pass them for you yesterday. The first thing he said is, had it been otherwise, had I answered you yesterday, Ishtalai, I would have made an error. The Amalecha, what would I have told you? I would have said, Rav Rabbi Yochanan, we rule like Rabbi Yochanan. If it's born on Shabbos, you can't. If it's born on Yontif, you can use it on Shabbos. That would have been the first thing that popped into my head. If you asked me yesterday when I wasn't thinking straight, I would tell you, fine, it's permissible. But I'm not going to tell you that anymore. Aren't you gladly waited? Hama Rava says, we rule like Rav in these three things. We don't have to worry what the three things are, but one of them is our case of Shabbos and Yontif with the egg. Bein l'kula, bein l'chumra. Whether Rav is being more lenient or being more strict. In three areas we rule like him when the debate of Rav and Rabbi Yochanan, and one of them is the egg. So here you actually have not only a debate of Rav and Rabbi Yochanan, it's a debate of Tanaim, and it's a debate of the Amoraim who to paskin like. Okay, so let's just take a moment. What are the things we've introduced so far? Because it's been sort of a lot of ideas. One idea is that the idea of Davasheshlo Matirim not only applies to Tarogas, it even applies to issues of doubt and Safek D'Rabbanan. That was fascinating. Back to the egg, what did we learn? We had a tradition of Rabbi Eliezer who said, like Beit Shammai, Rabbi Eliezer is from Beit Shammai, that you can eat the egg, assuming, again, the hen is set aside for eating. But then he used this very flowery language or whatever, extreme language of eat the egg, eat the mother, eat the chick, etc. And now we're introducing the question, if it's born on Shabbos, is it permissible on Yom Tov or vice versa? In order to say that, you have to say it's two Kedushot, which we obviously do because we make Havdalah. But even if you say it's two Kedushot, the question is the position of Hachana D'Rabba. And that's a debate of Rav and Rabbi Yochanan, whether we're worried about Hachana D'Rabba or not. Okay, now the Gemara continues. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Now we get to another case, taking us away from the egg a little bit, but still in the land of Muktzah. So let's take a look. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Eitzim shenashru min hadek of Shabbos. Wood fell off of a tree on Shabbos. A branch fell down. Also, and again, it's a Shabbos Yontif case. So it fell down on Shabbos. Tomorrow's Yontif. Can I use the branch that fell down yesterday on Shabbos in order to put into my fire for my firewood? And he says you can't. Al teshiveni Beitzah. Don't tell me. But Beitzah you're allowed to do it. So why should Shabbos be any different? My time of Beitzah. Why by Beitzah are you allowed to do it? Mishum. Where am I? To be Yom Namichaz Yom because on Shabbos itself. So if an egg was born on Shabbos, why could you use it the next day on Yontif? Because on Shabbos itself, it was raw and it was possible to be used. So therefore, and the only reason it was forbidden, and the only reason you didn't use it, was because of this idea of muktzah. So muktzah on Shabbos, and then following is Yontif. Yontif is its own day. Ava, where am I? Where am I? Because you could swallow it. Today. Where am I? Okay. Mishum divyoma nami chaz v'gamav. Loka shari le'ad l'machar. So, and if we're not going to permit you to eat it, we're not going to permit you to eat it until tomorrow. It was born today on Shabbos. We say eat it tomorrow. You'll never anyway eat it on Shabbat because excuse me. I'm sorry. All right. So here's the story. The egg is born on Shabbos, and you're going to paskin like Rabbi Yochanan. It can be eaten on the following day that it's Yontif. It's not a muktzah concern. There's steak you shot. It was ready yesterday. You can eat it on Yontif. Okay, but in the exact same scenario, he's saying by a tree branch that fell down, you can't. Why? He's saying, look, here's the difference. The egg, when we're telling you it's usher on Yontif, don't use it today, use it tomorrow. You know that there's only one reason you're not using this egg that was laid today, which is what? Muktzah. But by the trees, if the branch that we tell you, don't use it today, use it tomorrow, there's a different reason why you're not using the branch, right, on Shabbos, which is you can't do anything with it, right? And it's muktzah, okay? So therefore, here's going to be the issue. So let's take a look. Here's Shabbos, here's Yom Tov, okay? The case that the egg was born here, right? So if it weren't for muktzah, you would use it, you would swallow it. But we say don't swallow it because of muktzah, okay? And then you can use it, though, tomorrow. So that's not going to be a problem. You're going to understand that muktzah applies to eggs that are laid. I didn't use it yesterday. I could have used it. I could have had it raw, but I didn't use it yesterday. So it doesn't. It applies to eggs that are laid, but I'm allowed to use it tomorrow because they're separate kedushot. But if you've got your branch of your tree that fell down here, right? And you're not going to use it on Shabbos, are you going to know that the reason you're not using it is because of the idea of muktzah? Maybe there's another reason, right? What legitimate purpose can you put that branch to on Shabbat? So when you come to use it on Yontif, you won't realize that fundamentally the principle of muktzah applies. Let's read that, okay? So in that case, since you could have had it raw, the loka shari le elulam ad lemachar, and we're going to say don't eat it today on Shabbos, eat it tomorrow on Yontif. Midi yoma debas yom asura. Then it'll be a very clear message. Why didn't I eat that egg yesterday? Oh yeah, I wasn't allowed to eat it because it was born not yesterday. That'll be what you understand. So just because we're allowing you to do it on Yontif, it's not going to lead to you to then assume that there's no problem with the egg and you could eat it even when the day it was laid. But eitzim b'lav chazi liyomayu, but wood that falls from a tree that you had nothing to use it for on Shabbos. So isharlu l'macher, if we'll say use the wood tomorrow on Yontif, asi l'meimar, you will come and say, oh look, a tree branch that fell down isn't muktzah. They let me use it on Yontif. So why didn't I use it on Shabbos? Yomi nami sharu. Really, on its own day, it would be permissible. I didn't use it on Shabbos because you can't. What was I going to do with a branch on Shabbos? But maybe they'll say that the fact that you're letting me use it tomorrow proves that this really is not fundamentally a problem of muktzah. That malushim Shabbos hudlo chazil asakan was just yesterday that I couldn't burn it on Shabbat. All right, so is that clear? The basic principle is two kedushot, no do b'zeh muteret b'zeh. But now we're introducing a new concern. If an egg that was laid, even if halachically it's two kedushot, like we even call it a 3-day yontif, not 3-day yontif, 2 days in Shabbos. But even if halachically it's two kedushot, not necessarily experientially. So if we tell you, don't eat the egg today, eat it tomorrow, you will never think, oh, there's no problem of an egg that was laid because they're letting me eat it. Because you'll say, no, I couldn't have eaten it yesterday. So fundamentally there is a problem and you'll understand why we're letting you do it on Yontif. But if we say the same by the log of wood, go ahead and use it tomorrow, then you're going to say, look, today, fundamentally a log that falls from a tree or a branch falls from a tree is not a problem. The only reason I didn't use it yesterday was because what was I going to do with it yesterday? And therefore, you will experientially think of this as one Kedusha and infer from the fact that we're letting you use it on Yantiv that in principle you could use it on Shabbat. And therefore, you're going to come to assume that things that are born, and fall off of trees and whatever are fundamentally not a problem. Yes?
By this logic, Rabbi Yochanan would probably say that if the branch fell off the tree on a first day Yom Tov, it ought to be able to be burned on the second day Yom Tov.
If we say today Kedusha by that, which we do, but yeah. Okay, so the Gemara says like this: Amar Rav Masna. So now we've introduced the idea of 2 days. No, the bezer muteris bezer or not. We basically ask, and it is muteris bezer. There are 2 kedushot. But then the question is, will it sometimes lead to the old slippery slope? And there might be cases where we don't want you to use it yesterday because then you'll make more wrong inferences about the day before. Now, Amar Rav Masna said Rav Masna, while we're talking about trees and branches that fall from the tree and the muktzah problem on Yontiv, because it's something new, let's say it was an overhanging of your oven and it fell straight into your oven. So what do I do now? Like, do I stick my hand in the oven to take it out? So, in that case, B'Yom Tov, what do you do? Marba leim eitzim muchanim umasikan. Just throw in extra wood and make it a robe and make it batel and go ahead and use it. Okay, so the Gemara says, now, 1 minute. It assumed that the idea of throwing in extra wood means that when I stir it, which is something they would normally do, that you're only stirring the kosher wood, not the non-muktzah wood. But the Gemara says not true. You're going to be stirring the non-muktzah wood, the muktzah wood as well. All the wood will be stirred, and you're moving muktzah. By the way, it's fundamentally not a problem to use muktzah. The fundamental problem is to, and the Rashba comments on this on the Gemara, that the Gemara's problem was only about stirring it, not about it being burnt. The fundamental problem is not using muktzah, it's moving muktzah. When I was growing up, right, we thought muktzah was the cooties. So if you don't touch a car, it's muktzah, right? Not only is it not a problem not to touch a car, in principle you can sit on a car because you're not moving it. You can sit on a rock. Okay, now I'm a little bit moving it. It goes down a little bit. I don't really move it from its place. It's only part of it bends. So you're basically allowed to use muktzah. You just can't move muktzah. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. So wonderful. You added more wood. You're still going to stir it. You're still going to move the muktzah. So the Gemara says like this. No. Even deruba hetera, since now the majority of it is permissible wood, so even deruba hetera, ninu ki kamahapich hetera kamahapich. You're just stirring the majority of the wood, and you are not stirring the actual the muktzah wood itself, which means basically we put in a majority and we make it batel. So this is a fascinating idea. Like we know you can do bittul by foods. Whoever heard you can do bittul by muktzah? But again, most muktzah is distinct, and you know where it is, and you can't say bittul. But you throw a lot of logs of wood together, it's not clear which is the log and whatever, and therefore you can apply the principle of bittul. 1 minute. So the Gemara says, kamevatel isur lechatchila. 1 minute. That you are willingly creating bittul. We can't do that. I can't just go ahead and take a little chazer, sauce and put it in my soup and say, bittul. You're not allowed to. A bittul is for a post facto situation. You can't say it lechatchila. The Tanan ein mevatlin isur lechatchila. We have a Mishnah that says you do not cause bittul of forbidden things at the outset. You only deal with it once it already happened. It says no. Hani mili b'dioraisa. That's when it's a biblical problem, like chazer, meat and milk. Then we don't do bittul from the outset. Avol b'drabanan. But if it's only a rabbinic issue, mevatlin, we can actually actively do bittul. Now, this Gemara says it as a big categorical comment. If so, wow, kashrus would be so much easier. You could actively do bittul on rabbinic problems. Such a large percentage of kashrus problems are rabbinic. But basically, there's a lot of evidence in other Gemaras that that's not true. That you cannot proactively do bittul even by drabanans. And they basically say this is a weak drabanan. Muktzah is very different than other drabanans, and therefore, and also as we're going to see in a minute, it's about to be burnt up. It doesn't really have so much status and identity. So there's a whole discussion about this, but don't be misled by this statement. The statement does sound like you could do bittul lechatchila, proactive bittul by drabanans, but what it really means is at least by this drabanan you can. It's only a drabanan, at least by this drabanan you can. And that's why you throw in extra wood. So the Gemara says, we have Ashi the Amar. Remember, we started the day by Rav Ashi quoting this whole Mishnah about the pressed figs and telling us that there's a position. I'm sorry, not the pressed figs, but the issue about the egg. Excuse me. Remember, Rav Ashi said the egg was the one that we're dealing with. That's why it's not batel here, and that's why is the suffix about the egg about Shabbos and Yom Tov Aser? Because even though it's rabbinic, it's a davashesh l'matirin. So now the Gemara is saying, if that's true, that even rabbinic matters like the egg is a davashesh l'matirin, and we're not even going to rely on safek, then why do we rely on the bittul? You're still being mevatalit, right? If the issue here of the arba be'elef kulan asurot is because davashesh l'matirin is not batel, so that's exactly the story with the wood. How can you tell me what we're doing is bittul? Didn't we learn that bittul doesn't work by davashesh l'matirin? So let's take a look. So the Gemara says, how can you explain it? So how does bittul work? That's when the isser is still, really around in its own form. Here, the isser is in the process of being burnt. So again, to say davashesh l'matirim doesn't really work. Okay, and therefore, maybe you could say it's a specific aspect about the halacha of davashesh l'matirim, because it's not like use it tomorrow. It's in the middle of being burnt. How can I use it tomorrow? It's being burnt right now, right? Mm-hmm. So, but basically, we don't. So even though this has a davashesh l'matirim quality, we will still allow bittul to work because it is in the process of being burnt. Let's read one more point. Itmar was taught Shnei Yomim Tovim Shel Golios. Let's say you have a 2-day yontif in Chutz La'aretz. So Rav says, no, you know what, let's stop here, because it's already 8:30 and this is already a new topic. Okay. So, I'm sorry if I was not so coherent.
That case is the one saying about theory with the branch is only if the branch happens.